Hey guys, Bios Ramos here. And the Dolphins unfortunately did not end this game with the W. They looked like they were, but they did not. Final score was Miami Dolphins 14, Tampa Bay Buccaneers 16. Let's get into it. So before I want to say anything, the first three quarters of this game it was good. It was good. Highly defensive game overall, but the fourth quarter is where it was all at. That's where all the action was. That's where both teams were just dire for a win, and that's what happened, and that's how it came to be. So let's go over it. I'm gonna go over big points for the Buccaneers. I'm not gonna go into depth with the Buccaneers, but I'm gonna go into depth with the Dolphins. So let's start off with Jameis Winston. Only played one drive. He went 2 for 4, 24 yards, and he was sacked once for a loss of 11 yards. And then for Blaine Gabbert, he played a majority of the remainder of the first half. He went 5 for 12, 42 yards, and he was sacked twice for a loss of 13 yards. And then we have Ryan Griffin, who ended off the game for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, went 14 for 21, 201 yards, 1 touchdown, and was sacked once for 9 yards. Yep. And then let's go over the Dolphins, where we have Ryan Fitzpatrick. He played like 3 drives, I believe, 3 or 2 drives. He went 3 for 9, 20 yards, and he was sacked once for a loss of 7 yards. And he had a good run, and then it was negated by a holding penalty. And literally, he was about to pass the first down marker, and he dropped his shoulder, and the guy just keep doing that, Fitzpatty. I love it, love it. And then we have Jake Ruddock. He closed off the game for the Dolphins. He went 6 for 11, and he had 72 yards, and he had 1 touchdown and 1 interception. And then we get to finally Josh Rosen, who started off the game, and I'm gonna dive more into that at the end of the video. But he went 10 for 18, 102 yards, and he was sacked 3 times for a loss of 15 yards. He played the whole first half, and then starting off the second half, Fitzpatrick played a little bit, and then Ruddock finished the game. So when we go to rushing, leading rusher for Tampa Bay was there. I'm gonna butcher this. Agumbale. I completely butchered it. I'm sorry. If you ever see this video, I'm sorry, man. But he had 13 carries for 34 yards. And then Andre Ellington, he was a former Arizona Cardinal, so Josh Rosen was familiar with him. He had 6 carries for 15 yards. And then the rookie Ronald Jones had 2 carries for 7 yards. That's pretty much it for Tampa Bay. Besides some runs, but besides that, nothing crazy. Nothing over 10 yards there. And then we have Patrick Laird, who played pretty much the whole second half, fourth quarter, third quarter, and all. So he was a leading rusher for Miami, 7 carries, 51 yards. He had a couple good carries that were negated by penalties, which I'm going to go over that too. But yeah, he went 7 carries for 51 yards. Kenneth Farrell, AAF player that we signed, he had 3 carries, 41 yards. Myles Gaskin had 6 carries, 17 yards. Mark Walton had 5 carries for 8 yards. And then we had 2 QB runs. One was Fitzpatrick, 2 yards. It would have been a bigger one, but negated by a penalty again. And Jake Ruddock had a negative 1 yards on a run. And then when we go to receiving, leading receiver for Tampa Bay was Tanner Hudson, 6 receptions, 93 yards, 1 touchdown. The guy who I'm going to butcher his name, he had 3 receptions for 54 yards. And then Bobo Wilson, 2 receptions, 48 yards. And Justin Watson, 2 receptions, 22 yards. O.J. Howard, 1 reception, 16 yards. And Andre Ellington, 4 receptions, 14 yards. For the Dolphins, we had a lot of different people catch the ball today. So everyone had 1 or 2 receptions at the most for the Dolphins. Saeed Blacknell, yeah, I said his name right. 1 reception for 25 yards. Durham Smythe, 1 reception, 22 yards. Isaiah Ford, 2 receptions, 20 yards. Bryce Butler, 2 receptions, 18 yards. Patrick Laird, he had 2 receptions, 16 yards, and 1 touchdown. Not bad. Chris Myarick, 1 reception, 16 yards. Kenny Stills, 2 receptions, 16 yards. Mike Gesicki, 2 receptions, 14 yards. Reese Horn, he had 1 reception, 12 yards. Mark Walton, 1 reception, 12 yards. What else? Clive Walford, one reception, 10 yards. Preston Williams, 1 reception, 7 yards. Nick O'Leary, 1 reception, 5 yards. And Kenneth Farrell, 1 reception, 1 yard. Preston Williams would have had a deep touchdown if he had not stepped out of bounds, because he ended up catching the ball at the end. But he literally had his toe out of bounds. And then I think he hit his other foot out of bounds while he was trying to bobble the ball, and then he ended up catching it. It was a great play. If he was 2 inches more towards the inbounds, it would have been a touchdown. It would have been an awesome play. But unfortunately, that did not happen. But that's what preseason's for. So, let's go over some fumbles. Andre Ellington for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fumbled once, and he lost it. And then Eric Rowe recovered it. And then Trenton Irwin had 1 fumble. It was while we were receiving a punt. It popped out, and then it landed right in Chris Lemon's arms, and he picked it up, and he literally landed it right here at his chest, and he just took it for a couple more yards, got us down a little more downfield. And now let's get into the top defenders. Just for Miami, I'm not going to go over all the stats for the Tampa Bay defenders. We had Sam McGuavin, who has been honestly one of the highlights so far for, possibly making the team for the Dolphins. And he had 6 solo tackles, 2 of them for a loss. Adolphus Washington, 4 solo tackles. Nick DeLuca had 4 solo tackles and 1 tackle for a loss. Charles Harris had 3 solo tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 1 of them was for a loss. And he had 4 QB hits, which is not bad at all. Good job, Charles Harris, today. Jamal Wiltz, he had 3 solo tackles. Chris Lamons, I forgot how they pronounce it, but he had 3 solo tackles and 1 pass deflection. Devon Godshaw had 1 tackle. All of these are solo tackles. There's total tackles and solo tackles. I'm just going over solo tackles. Jerome Baker had 1 solo tackle, so did Devon Godshaw. Jerome Baker had half a sack with Charles Harris. There was one play that he almost had Blaine Gabbert, but then he grabbed his jersey, and then Blaine Gabbert just got out of it. And then a couple plays later, then that's when him and Charles Harris just got him. Then we had Nate Orchard, 2 solo tackles and 1 sack. Christian Wilkins, 2 solo tackles, 1 sack. And then Jerome Baker had 1 QB hit. Nate Orchard had 3, and then Christian Wilkins had 2. And the rest it's notable, but we'll just get on. So there was no interceptions for the Dolphins this game, but Tampa Bay had Jamal Dean intercept Jake Ruddock in the 4th quarter. And then we have Mark Walton had kick return, 1 for 26 yards. Miles Gaskins 1 for 14 yards. And then for punt returns, we have Preston Williams 3 punt returns for 12 yards, and Trenton Irwin 3 for 9 yards. And then when he did that fumble right into Lamont's arms. And then when we go to the kicking game, we have Jason Sanders going 2 for 2. For the whole game, it was pretty much just field goals until the 4th quarter. And then we have so Tampa Bay had 2 kickers. They had Matt Gay and Chiaro Santos. Both of them didn't miss. They went 3 for 3. Matt Gay went 2 for 2. Santos went 1 for 1. The long for Matt Gay was the game winner, which was 48 yards. And then Santos had a long of 23. And Jay Sanders had a long of 49, which is not bad at all. Now, when it comes to the punting game, both teams punted 7 times. Matt Hack punted 7 times for 306 yards. 1 was a touchback, and 2 were in the 20, and his longest was 55 yards. And then Bradley Pinion, 311 yards, 1 touchback, 1 in the 20, and the longest was 52. My only thing with Matt Hack this game was a lot of his punts were, it's probably by design, but a lot of them were towards the sideline, and then they just bounced back, and then went out of bounds. So it just wasn't good punts from Matt Hack this game, to be honest. But that's it for the stat lines for both teams, mainly the Dolphins. And Brian Flores, I took some notes down. It was a very brief post-game press conference. But they pretty much started off asking him about Josh. Why did they start Josh? And he just started to go on about how he thinks Josh did well, basically, and that there's always room for improvement. You know, he wanted him to understand how it's going to be going against the first teamers. Not only that, but getting familiar with the first team players of the Dolphins, mainly the O-line, just understanding how it is in the actual game against anyone but your own team. Because that's what it's been so far besides the joint practices and sometimes when he's playing. But by the time he got to play in the first game, it was a bunch of second teamers. But he wanted him to get familiar with getting snaps from Daniel Kilgore because it's irreplaceable to understand how the snaps are coming from, you know, in a live game when it is opposed to practice. And so, especially since it was raining before the whole time before the game started, and then once the game started, it pretty much stopped raining, which was a good thing. Because if not, this game would have been way too sloppy and not enough seeing what the quarterbacks could do. They probably would have thrown the ball, but just not enough to what they did today. And overall, when he was addressing the like when they were asking questions about the team, he said that there was too many penalties, and I agree with it wholeheartedly because we would have a big run and you'll see a flag back at the line of scrimmage, if not a little bit upfield, and it was, guess what, holding. So that's all I have for you guys. If you enjoyed the video, give it a nice thumbs up. Don't forget to share it to any of your Dolphins friends, family, anybody who's part of the Fin Fam. Make sure they get to see this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe as well. Click the notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. And don't forget to check out my website. I'm going to be writing articles soon in the future. Just want to get back into the swing of things. Definitely editing videos is a little tricky. Took me a while, the last video. But I'm getting better at it, you know, take some practice. And then once I feel good with that, I'll get back into writing articles, which is pretty simple. And then I'll have more stuff down my website for you guys. And that's about it, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the game today. Hopefully next time, hopefully the Dolphins get the win. And that's about all. So, fins up, guys.